Hello, I'm Gus Downing, publisher and editor of the D&D Daily, and this is the Loss Prevention News Network. We're here today with Charles Delgado, VP Asset Protection for Meijer out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. You know, when we began putting this event together this past November, Charles had mentioned to us his thoughts about doing an episode on this subject of the insider threat and server room mitigation. And quite frankly, we were thrilled he brought it up and impressed that we'd have an opportunity to present this to the industry, as it's an often overlooked and undervalued subject in the retail industry. When you think about the insider threat, you usually think about the defense industry, the technology industry, and a number of others. But most don't really think about the retail industry. But as technology has evolved to the point where everyone is interconnected and has the ability to access virtually any information they want, we're now seeing an impact like never before, with designers selling designs for millions, hackers piggybacking on solution providers for data breaches, disgruntled employees deleting massive amounts of information, off-site employees creating exposures that never existed before, and disgruntled employees going viral with their opinions and pictures. In this new Internet of Things world that's evolving, we're going to see even more exposures to our data, our assets, and our organizations. So today's subject should be top of mind topic for every loss prevention executive, regardless of your level or company, because it's not just about stealing for money anymore. It's about revenge, hate, anger, terminations, resignations, and a whole host of other motivators that spawn human reaction. So with that, I'd like to welcome Charles here today, and thank you for taking the time.
Gus, always a pleasure, and I want to thank you for the work that you do in our space every single day. So,
thanks, Charles.
Absolutely.
You know, when you think about the insider threat, you really have to broaden your view and basically include virtually your entire employee population as it relates to potential exposure. Mm-hmm. So the question is, how do you develop a proactive and investigative program to safeguard the company and its reputation throughout the entire enterprise? And how does that evolve?
I think the first step, Gus, I'll be quite honest with you, it has to be a collaborative approach. Loss prevention cannot do this in a silo. IT security can't do it in a silo. It has to be a collaborative approach with public relations, legal at the table, risk management, IT security, getting together in a room and understanding and respecting the fact that this is a global issue throughout the entire organization. Oftentimes we do look at it from a corporate setting. But if you look at your corporate population, that's only 6 to 10% of all of your team members. So we do have to broaden our scope and understand that the majority and lion's share of our team members are out in our retail environment.
You know, obviously this includes social media, instant messaging, and smartphones. I mean, BYOD has become a security executive's nightmare. You know, and is this just an IT security problem as it relates to that side of the business?
I would say no, because IT security does an outstanding job identifying the opportunity, recognizing it, and then surfacing it. But when it comes to the investigative arm, that's really asset protection and loss prevention. That's our trait. That's in our bloodline, that's in our DNA, and that's where we have to truly lean in and support that aspect of the business. Our IT security folks, once again, they do an outstanding job, but they don't have the investigative mindset that it requires to really go full scope on an investigation.
Mm-hmm. You know, when executives think about the insider threat, most field executives think of it as a corporate problem. So what role does an LP field team play, and how involved do they get?
I would say, number one, they have to make a formidable, hardened target when it comes to server rooms in the field. Mm-hmm. Depending upon the size of your footprint, whether you have 200 store locations or 3,000. At the end of the day, our receiving docks, everyone says, that's the heartbeat of every retail environment. Well, your server room is a main artery to that heartbeat. So in the field, they got to make sure, and they have to really ensure compliance when it relates to the server rooms, making sure that they're secure, access control is controlled, making sure we have good camera coverage, things of that nature that really put PCI front and forward when you think about mitigating the risk.
Can you talk a little bit more about the server room mitigation and controlling that environment, and even your thoughts that you had mentioned before this about the PCI and EMV coming out, especially without the PIN here in the next year.
Well, in the next year, as you just stated, I mean, we have EMV coming out, EMV chip technology. What we're hearing from our counterparts and colleagues in the EU who have had this out for a little while, the threat is no longer the outside hacker. It's that individuals being hired on as a cashier, a receiving team member, low-level team members that are coming in and identifying our vulnerabilities. So when you think about the server room mitigation, I would encourage everyone to start with a comprehensive analysis of your server rooms. Do a gap analysis, see if in fact that you have consistency across the board as far as your expectations around securing and mitigating that risk in your server rooms. But as that technology rolls into the United States and into the retail environment in North America, we have to be ready for that because we're going to see folks coming in low-level jobs trying to gain access to our server rooms.
Because it really, in Europe, it's been pushing that to the internal employees more. I mean, that's where they're really seeing the fraud and the information stealing and such.
Yeah, everything that I've read over the last 6 to 8 months from the EU, and you know, I get a number of magazines and articles, they're all talking about the threat is no longer the outside hacker. It's that team member that's been hired low level, puts a device on a server for a short period of time and can capture a tremendous amount of technology and information. And you mentioned it earlier, when you think about BYOD, bring your own device, we're not the defense industry, so we allow team members to bring in cameras and cell phones and things of that nature. So that's where the field perspective really has to come into play, where we harden that target and make sure we're mitigating the risk at every level. Absolutely.
You know, obviously the one thing that truly stands out in the conversation is that today's LP executive truly has to broaden their view in definition of loss prevention and shrinkage reduction efforts and include these exposures. So what advice would you have for a young LP executive coming up the ranks if they have no exposure to this?
Sure. I would say cultivate relationships, firm relationships, both internally as well as externally. I'll start with the external component. Don't wait. We should always be proactive rather than make reactionary decisions. So be proactive, partner with FBI, U.S. Secret Service, OSAC, DSAC, ISMA, partner with these partner with these outside agencies ahead of time. So you understand if in fact you do have a breach or someone, if in fact does gain access to one of your server rooms, you know who to call, you know what's expected. And then of course internally, have those conversations and broach that dialogue early with your internal partners. Once again, I will reiterate, it's all about the partnership within your organization and making sure that everyone has a level set of where we're going to go if in fact this happens. Absolutely.
Well, Charles, I want to thank you for being here today and coming to the event.
My pleasure, Gus. Always a pleasure.
Thank you much.
Thank you, sir. Absolutely.
Well, that's it. Excuse me. That's it for this episode. We'd like to thank you for watching. And until next time, let's keep them all safe out there.